In antitrust law, defining a market usually comes down to one remarkably simple question: what alternatives do customers actually have? For ordinary goods, the math is straightforward. If the price of apples goes up, shoppers buy oranges instead. That substitution defines the boundary of the market. Lawyers even have a specific tool for this, called the SSNIP test, which measures how a hypothetical price bump pushes buyers elsewhere. But modern platforms break that simple arithmetic. Instead of selling one thing to one person, platforms sit in the middle, connecting multiple groups whose participation relies entirely on each other. This diagram illustrates indirect network effects. Because platforms link Group A to Group B, changes ripple outward. More merchants make a credit card more valuable to shoppers. A higher readership makes a website more valuable to advertisers. Value is tied to the opposite side's volume.
When you try to apply an old, one-sided tool like the SSNIP test to this kind of multi-sided system, the math falls apart. It becomes incredibly difficult to use and far too easy for legal teams to misuse. The core issue goes beyond mere complexity. The real mistake current antitrust doctrine makes is treating all these multi-sided networks as if they operate in the exact same way. To understand where market power actually lies, we have to split platforms into distinct categories. This image outlines 3 types, starting with Category 1, transactional platforms. Think of American Express. A merchant and a cardholder meet at the exact same moment on the platform to complete an exchange. Because both sides have to be there simultaneously, the pricing is set across the 2 parties as a single integrated product. Separating them in a courtroom distorts the economic reality. Contrast that with Category 2, process platforms. Online advertising and search engines like Google are the classic examples here. These systems do not host one unified transaction. Advertisers, intermediaries, and publishers interact through a chain of services over time. The platform coordinates the journey, but the user and the advertiser aren't shaking hands in a single simultaneous exchange. If a judge forces a unified market definition onto a process platform, it actively obscures the reality of those separable stages. A platform is either an integrated transaction or a sequenced process. Properly identifying which one you're dealing with is the first step to mapping out exactly where a monopoly might be hiding. Then we reach the 3rd category, one largely missing from modern antitrust conversations: regulatory platforms. These networks operate as strict gatekeepers. They wield total control over access to the system itself. Major sports leagues operate this way. A centralized governing body writes the rulebook. They determine which teams participate, the terms of player contracts, sponsor visibility, and even how fans access the game. In this arena, the primary economic lever is the raw authority to dictate who is allowed to step onto the playing field. Matching an ad to a click or swiping a credit card is secondary to basic entry. Regulatory platforms pose a unique legal challenge. Their governing rules structurally define the very boundaries of the market. This legal blind spot was tested directly in the North American Soccer League versus USSF and MLS antitrust lawsuit. The NASL alleged the United States soccer governing body unlawfully restricted their access to top-tier league status, locking them out of the highest level of competition. The legal system examined the claim. A jury rejected the NASL's proposed market definition entirely, and an appellate court upheld that decision. The plaintiff lost because the courts evaluated the U.S. Soccer Federation as if it were a standard transactional platform. They looked for the economic dynamics of a credit card network inside a sports league. The judges didn't have a conceptual framework to recognize the federation's actual structural role: a regulatory gatekeeper actively controlling entry into an entire sporting ecosystem. Current antitrust law is incredibly comfortable evaluating simple metrics like price hikes, reduced output, and consumer substitution, but it struggles to measure economic harm that occurs entirely at the governance layer. If our legal definitions continue to treat every network like a transaction, we miss the actual threat. Systemic gatekeepers will maintain a massive legal advantage, retaining the power to monopolize competition long before the game even begins.
Thanks for watching. For the deep dive economic analysis behind these stories, join us at EconWorks.com. Subscribe to stay informed on where law and economics meet the market. We'll see you in the next episode.